across the galaxy. This is where conspiracy on the wild side meets the perspective of a lifetime. This is the Free Zone with your host, Freeman.
Hello and welcome to the Free Zone. Well, there's about 10,000 YouTubers out there that aren't ready to make the shift, and I just want to try and persuade you a little bit to come on over to FreemanTV.com there, YouTubers. I love the 10,000 of you there that listen every week, and I do everything I can to get that video up there on YouTube, but with all the banning, blocking, and demonetizing, if I'm too busy, the YouTube video is going to be the first thing sacrificed in my workload. So if you really want to catch the show and you really want to keep up, it's so much easier if you use the iTunes or you use the Android app or the iPhone app, or go over to FreemanTV.com. It works great with your phone. It works well with everything, and you can surf while you're listening. It doesn't matter. So there are many ways to listen to the Free Zone outside of YouTube. So those 10,000 of you there on YouTube, I hope that you will, plug it into your phone, take the RSS feed, use whatever podcast player you want, and get all the shows, because unfortunately YouTube is banning, blocking, shadow banning, and demonetizing everything I do. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, I never, ever thought the Freeman Perspective was going to become a business. This was not something I ever even considered when I started this show, but it has become that. And I'll tell you what, my Strawman is starting to take over more and more as I try to get on top of being businessman instead of free man. But that is the way of the world. I mean, folks, back in 1999, I saw the high-profile ritual being performed by all the major nations for their Y2K celebration, and it was absolutely a celebration of Lucifer, without doubt, and that became my very first video. Now, that moment for me was a signal. That moment for me changed my life forever, as I saw how strange our world really was. And it was that moment of Y2K, that I said, I'm done. I am done with this world. I am walking away. I am going to be free man. And I did. I walked away and I kept going. Now, this meant that I left my poor little straw man unattended. Now, as I signed up to Google Ads for my YouTube channel, some 8 years after having my YouTube channel, I finally decided to monetize. I seem to have missed a check mark in my registration, and therefore, Taxman, Mr. IRS, is sending me notifications saying that I didn't pay the taxes on the money they gave me. Now, I never intended for this to happen, but of course Google is taking care of my straw man for me and sending all these documents in, but unfortunately I hit the wrong check mark. Therefore, my forms, my documents were not correct. They were sent in the wrong form, and therefore I had to pay double on these taxes. And the irony of it is that I paid them again, and they're still sending me letters saying that they can't process the paperwork. So the IRS was eager and gleefully cashing my check, but yet still can't seem to process the paperwork. So as this job that I now have, the Free Zone, the Freeman TV, the Freeman Perspective, which is now my business, I've discovered now I have to nurture my straw man. And due to a few of my YouTube videos that went viral because people love to ridicule them, I made a little bonus money. I decided to take this extra money and put a down payment on a house. Yes, that's right. Free man is trying to become homeowner man, but it turns out my straw man is making me angry man. So as I filed for, I got in contact with a mortgage lender, got everything going. It was all looking great. My credit was awesome. Everything was great. My straw man snuck back into the puzzle. And 20 years later, it turns out that a $1,300 debt for student loans that I had completely forgotten about, as I saw the world become as bizarre as it is, I walked away from that and forgot all about it. Well, 20 years later, my straw man came back to haunt me. They are saying I owe them $21,000 for a $1,300 loan 20 years ago. I said, this can't possibly be. There's got to be something that went wrong here. They were telling me it happened in 2007. Well, as you guys know, in 2007, I was homeless in Guatemala performing the first ever all-night ritual with the Mayans at the pyramids of Tikal. So there was no way I was entering any contracts with any sort of lenders, and I was certain that I was a victim of identity theft. Certainly, a $1,300 debt could not turn into a $21,000 debt, even in 20 years. But they acted like this was quite normal, and the truth of it is, it was. There was over $13,000, $14,000 in interest and fees. So not only did I suddenly find myself with a $21,000 debt, but this also killed the very mortgage I was trying to get. So now I lost everything, and I'm $21,000 in debt. This is the nightmare of our straw man. This is the nightmare that can turn lives from happy, joyous occasions to utter despair and depression. We cannot separate our emotional bodies from that financial crisis, from the straw man thickness that we have to walk through. We cannot separate these things. And, well, I ended up very sick and had to cancel my show with our fantastic guest that's going to discuss all of this with us and more, Clint Richardson. Now, Clint is a certified sound engineer and a former Hollywood sound designer, but he quit his career due to the corruptive influence that we're learning about with Harvey Weinstein, and he realized he was a part of this madness. After this harsh realization, he felt he was some way responsible for even creating drone pilots for the military, because he knew that these conditioned kids with their video games were growing up without the capacity for empathy. Now, Clint survived cancer at 17, and this helped him to understand the vaccinations and even prompted him to create a vaccine documentary called Lethal Injection. Now, Clint is an outspoken advocate against and blackballed from his professional industry. Clint is struck with an impressive but useless resume. He has become a full-time activist since 2009. He's a researcher, a documentary filmmaker, and now a radio show host and a very special guest for us. He is the author of a book series called Strawman, The Real Story of Your Artificial Person, and he is happily giving it away to you for free. So that'll help your straw man. Please welcome to the show, Clint Richardson. It's great to talk with you today after all I've been through.
I was feeling bad for you there for a while. Thanks for the great introduction. I knew exactly what you were going through because, I actually went through a breakdown, a mental breakdown when I was in Hollywood trying to, I was going through identity theft. And nothing tells you that your identity, your straw man, your name, your person is not your own, your status is not your own, than going through identity theft, where someone is buying houses, buying and selling cars, getting credit cards in your name, and opening bank accounts, stealing the money out of your bank account. At that point, you kind of realize, hey, if my identity can be stolen, then my identity is not actually my own. So that's what you're experiencing is this separate sort of artificial thing that is administered whether you like it or not. And the records are kept, and unfortunately, as Bond and the very definition of this word straw man, it's a very legitimate term. A lot of people don't want to think so, but it comes from the Latin strawmani is homo, man of straw. What that really means is a man of no blood, because the law is set up in two ways. It recognizes the man as in the God-given rights, the unalienable rights, the natural law, and then it has its own sort of opposite system called the legal system, where it only recognizes legal things, which are, of course, artificial. They have no substance. So a man of straw is what? A man that has form without substance, no blood, right? So it's literally defined as strawmanius homo is Latin for a man of straw, one of no substance, put forward as bail or surety. And when you go to other dictionaries, you find it's a draft or outline copy ready for suggestions and comments. It's a third party used for a cover in illegal or shady deals, which citizenship certainly is. Nominee, director, or a weak or flawed person with no standing, also called a man of straw. So you're talking about an entity, a legal entity, a fiction with no substance that you are pretending to be. That legal entity created by at the birth certificate, the sharing of vital statistics. And that's what you're suffering. That's what we're all suffering from, is this sort of secondary or third party entity that we're acting as a commercial vessel or citizen ship. And what you're talking about right now is actually the very purpose. I always tell people, Freeman, I always tell them to go to, someone, maybe you're the man to do it, so no one else has done it yet. Make a t-shirt out of this, because I want people to understand what citizenship actually is, what the straw man is. You see, it says in U.S. Code, Title 42, Title 42, Section 1981, you'll see that it defines what equal rights are. And an equal right for a person or a status that is common or equal to all others is that everybody has the equal right to be punished or sanctioned under the law. So it says in Title 42, Section 1981, it says you have the right as a citizen of the United States to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted. The actual word is exacted, which actually means to take something from someone that is not your due. So a police officer hands you a citation, a ticket, he's exacting from you a fee for, basically a victimless crime, right? So exaction, extortion, same kind of concept. So those are your rights as a citizen, to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted from. And that's why people are confused about what is a natural right and what is a political right. Political right is something forced upon you, whereas a natural right is actually your duty, everyone's duty, to respect in all other people. So they say do no harm, etc. In legalism, it's almost the opposite. It's always the straw version, the form without substance. So it's a contractual obligation. So if someone gets a right, if I have a gay right or a trans whatever right, transhuman, trans this, if one section of the population gets a right, that means simply that all others have a duty, a contractual duty, to respect that right or that title or whatever. So no matter how against your personal or religious or whatever moral fabric something is, by being a strawman, by being a citizen, you are forced to respect the rights of all others. If not, then it's your right to be put in pain, punished, taxed, licensed, and extorted from. And that's what you're experiencing, my friend.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I had nothing to do with any of this. I walked into it blindly. I mean, seriously, I didn't know that I was a businessman. This all just kind of crept up on me. And without a doubt, the word of the day for the 21st century is citizen. And they are clearly working to make everybody think this is a great thing and you want to be a citizen. And soon enough, we're going to find that there will be regulation. Well, we already know there are regulations to being a citizen. I mean, just be a homeowner and have to deal with homeowners, commissions and things of that nature. But we are getting pushed into this concept of citizen and moving farther and farther away from the natural man.
Well, and it's much worse than that because it's a global agenda. Globalism happened because of pension funds. Without any other competition, globalism happened because of public and private pension funds. In other words, the ability of governments to invest in every corporation in the world. And if you look, my first venture into all this was to look at the comprehensive annual financial reports of governments and of corporations to see that government is the main shareholder of every corporation. Therefore, government elects the board of directors for every corporation through proxy shareholder votes. And of course, the board of directors elects the CEO. So government in this fashion pretty much has control over every corporation in the world, with the exceptions of, say, Walmart, etc. But where you can see who the shareholders are, Microsoft, Apple, all these corporations are all government corporations by ownership and stock investment. So you take that, you realize, oh, okay, China was built up through pension funds. Russia was built up through pension funds. Mexico built up through pension funds. Hershey's factory was forced to move to Mexico because of government pressure, because it's the main stockholder, right? This is how the system works now. You don't have corporations versus government. All corporations are essentially government. That is a summary of a very huge, I made a documentary about this called The Corporation Nation, which thecorporationnation.com, they're all on YouTube. They're all free. I went over the pension system, and that it's the main functionality of globalism is these, if you look at the typical stockholding reports of government, you'd be amazed at the millions of dollars in just one, like say Microsoft, one government, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these governments that have investments. So you're talking about a globalistic world. Well, the United Nations used to be Agenda 21, which stood for 2021. Now it's Agenda 2030 in the global plan to save the world, right? When you actually go and you see what their plans are, it's to bring biometric ID or digital ID to every man in the world, right?
Well, let me throw in a news story then from the Twitter feed real quick, because that has just occurred on a major level with China. And China is building a giant facial recognition database and ready to monitor all of their citizens, and they use the word citizens, within seconds. It's going to be tracking 1.3 billion citizens, and everybody is quickly adding their facial recognition to their iPhone so that they can sign in on their new iPhone. And we need to add to this story the idea of what's now called the wisdom of the crowd, if I can use a modern colloquialism, where they are going to engender us to become the police and to track down these anti-citizens, these criminals utilizing this technology. Then you throw in one more layer to this puzzle, and you have the new AI that has dominated the other AI technologies, showing that once we couple this AI with this facial recognition along with the wisdom of the crowd, when the people are thinking that they're managing to be smarter than the FBI. I mean, we can see this clearly with the Las Vegas shooting, how everybody's coming out saying, "Oh, I'm so much smarter than the powers that be. I know what happened. There were multiple shooters and they're all lying to us." And so we're really just starting to fill this pattern that they want of us to become the wisdom of the crowd. I'm going to use that TV show as an example, to become the thought police, the police, utilizing technology. And soon this will all be also taken over by AI, and we won't even have a play in this. So
yeah, well, and here's the problem with that is you're talking about biometrics, right? So you're talking about what right now is your, what makes you a person? What is it that establishes that you're a specific, uniquely identified person of the United States or citizen of the United States. Well, it's your driver's license. It's all external things, external marks, external signs. And that's the thing that they're trying to change, is they're trying to make it internal to where you can't even escape it. They have, for instance, vein recognition or vascular biometrics, which is identity management solutions that authenticate based on the unique patterns made by a user's veins, which is in your palm. What does the Bible say, right? It says the mark will be in your palm. You won't be able to buy, sell, or trade without the mark. Well, what happens when the mark is no longer an external thing, but actually part of your genetic makeup? Then you're kind of screwed, because you can't say, I'm not that person. Well, actually, we have you in the system. You can't escape anymore. You have biometric tracking. Singapore does iris scans from all citizens starting in 2017. You will not be able to get or re-register an identity card without an iris scan. Biometrics is taking over everywhere. Subsidized food shops in New Delhi are to have a biometric authentication. So in order to be a citizen, you have to be biometrically identified. In order to get supplies or services, you have to, of course, be scanned. What does the Bible say? And that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Well, yeah. So you're transitioning. What this is a transition from fictional identity, something that is completely external, strawman, without substance. In other words, something that can be erased from a computer and not exist, to biometric identification, which is again not escapable. And that's at some point, you got to realize that this is a choice that you're going to have to make, because pretty soon you're not going to be able to get a driver's license. You're not going to be able to get anything in the form of identity to get all the services and benefits from government until you provide whatever it is biometrically they want. So let me read you a few things just so you understand what's happening. United Nations Sustainable Development, we're all familiar with that. It used to be Agenda 21, but it's Development 2030. Target goal 16.9 says by 2030, we must provide legal identity for all, including birth registration. The World Bank, in its United Nations 2030 agenda, Identification for Development is the name of its publication. And its overview, it says providing legal identity for all, including birth registration. So there's your birth certificate. By 2030 is a target shared by the international community as part of the Sustainable Development Goals, Target 16.9. The World Bank Group has launched the Identification for Development, ID4D, cross-practice initiative to help our client countries achieve this goal, and with a vision of making everyone count, ensure a unique legal identity to enable digital ID-based services to all. So again, you can't get services unless you have a unique legal identity that is not only recognizable as a fictional entity, a straw man, but also it's taken right from something that what you would say is part of your nature, part of your reality. And so you can't escape it anymore. That's the scary part. And then finally, David Navarro, Special Representative of the UN Security General, United Nations, he gave a speech in 2016. He said, no community should be considered to be outside the span of this new agenda. Whatever your ethnicity, whatever your livelihood, whatever your lifestyle or location, all of you are inside the agenda. We need to inform everyone that these goals are at the heart of a plan for the future of the world's people, as well as the planet itself. Peace and security. Oh, there's those words. Human rights and justice and sustainable development brought together within this 2030 agenda. Now, this is no different than, going back to, let's say, the Pope with his unum sanctum that says all men should be under the heel of under the power of the Pope, popery, the Catholic religion. Going back to the Bible, where it says, where Caesar said that all men must be taxed. And you look up the word tax and it says registered. To be taxed, you must be registered. See, government, no one can be taxed unless you're using the property of another. So no man is ever taxed. It's the person, the straw man, which is property of government, a status that they give to you, like a rental car you're driving around or a piece on the Monopoly board that you're moving around, but it's always on someone else's property, isn't it? So you can only be taxed if you're registered. Thus, to provide legal identity for all, including birth registration, is the number one goal, really, of the United Nations, because then all men can be taxed. All men can be put under the boot of government, because all men are not acting as themselves under the natural law, under God's law, but they're acting as persons of some nation, united, basically United States. The states are states of the Union. In this case, the United States would be a state of the United Nations. That's where it's heading. So all nations would be under that central, what you would call the beast system, if you will, where we're all the beasts.
Right. And certainly you see that any nation that is not under the thumb of the central bank system, it just happens to be the ones that we're at war with. Yeah.
Of course, because you got to realize there's a huge, first of all, you have to know that knowledge only comes from knowing the opposite of something. So you cannot have knowledge of anything unless you know its opposite. And that's a general maxim that I follow in everything I do. If I learn something and it doesn't make sense, it's because I haven't learned the opposite. So the legal law is opposite to the Bible, for instance. The Bible law or the natural law, complete opposites. Every aspect of the Bible is against what we do in the legal system. That includes identity, it includes taking oaths. It includes just about, it says don't respect persons, don't respect flattering titles. Everything about what we do in the legal system is opposed to the quote-unquote natural law. And the natural law simply means keep your name clean. Keep legal fictional stuff off. Don't take any titles that are not your own, that can be controlled by a system of law that is not of nature, right? Man can only control you if you voluntarily put yourself into its straw man, its person, its status. That's all a person is a status. It's again, without substance, without blood. So,
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go.
Okay. I remember so well that when I was given my social security number, I was told adamantly, do not give this to anyone. Keep this completely secret. Don't use it at all. Don't ever release this to anyone. And now I got to give up my social security number to get cable on my television. And more recently, as I have not had a social security card in, 30, 40 years, I don't even know what happened to my social security card. I had to go apply for a new one in order to get my new smart ID from South Carolina.
Well, if you noticed, see, but people don't often read what comes with the social security card. But if you read the document that was attached, you get it, you detach it, and you throw out the insert. But it actually tells you this is not your property. This is property of government. Your social security number is property of government. That's why you're not allowed to technically use it as, technically you can't use social security as ID.
I have to use it for every ID.
I know. It's crazy. And they've just, they're allowing it to happen because they want everybody to get into this sort of one person, how do I say it? In other words, my chip, my ID, whatever it is that recognizes me as a person will have all that information anyway. So
without a doubt. I mean, here I am, $21,000 in debt for a $1,300 loan from 1997 that suddenly found me. It's just like, oh, by the way, and how can they even think that that's possibly normal? I mean, to boost, $21,000 on a $1,300 debt, even 20 years old. But the real point being that it was 20 years ago.
Well, if you really, you actually have an interesting opportunity because you could actually technically declare yourself statutorily dead, your person. Okay, let me read you a little thing because statutorily, if you actually did not use your identification, your person, for 7 years, you're technically dead according to the eyes of the law. Let me read you something.
Damn, I didn't know that.
The Huffington Post reported this it was October 10th of 2013, Findlay, Ohio, Associated Press. An Ohio man is finding out there's no easy way to come back from the dead. Donald Miller Jr. went to court this week to ask a county judge to reverse a 1994 ruling that declared him legally dead. After legally dead, that means your person is dead, not you. And that's another way to know that you are not your person. You're not your identity. After he had disappeared from his home 8 years earlier. But the judge turned down his request, citing a 3-year time limit for changing a death ruling. Hancock County Probate Court Judge Alan Davis called it a strange situation. We've got the obvious here. A man sitting in the courtroom right in front of me. He appears to be in good health, says Davis, who told Miller the 3-year limit was law, right? They don't think, oh, well, we should maybe alter the law. I don't know where that leaves you, but you're still deceased as far as the law is concerned, the judge said. Miller resurfaced about 8 years ago and went to court so that he could get a driver's license and reinstate his Social Security number. Hey, that sounds like Freeman. His ex-wife had opposed the move, saying she doesn't have the money to repay the Social Security benefits that were paid out to her and the couple's two children after Miller was declared legally dead. Robin Miller said her former husband vanished because he owed big child support payments and that overdue payments had totaled $26,000 by 1994, the Findlay Courier reported. He now lives at age 61 in Northwest Ohio, city of Fostoria. He told the judge that he disappeared in the 1980s because he had lost his job and was an alcoholic. He lived in Florida and Georgia before returning to Ohio in 2005. His parents told him about his quote-unquote death when he came back to the state, he said. It kind of went further than I expected. So in other words, here's a guy who literally went to the judge, standing there fully, obviously alive, saying, I want my identity. I can't access my identity because you declared me legally dead. My person, my status, legally dead. And the judge says, sorry, it's the statute of limitations doesn't allow it. 7 years is the statute of limitations. Where you have no activity, then that legal person can be declared legally dead. So I'm thinking
dead.
I'm thinking that nobody declared it on your behalf, like the wife declared it so that she could get Social Security benefits, right? So I'm thinking you have some kind of opportunity to, and what this guy and others like him, this is not the first time this has happened. What they don't realize is they've just been served a blessing. They've actually, people are dying to lose this Strawman. People are doing everything they can, researching for years and years on figuring out how to lose the Strawman. And all you got to do is disappear for 7 years and be declared legally dead.
I was praying for Y2K. I wanted a meltdown, but I didn't know I was legally dead.
So anybody that's going to tell me that they don't believe in the straw man, they don't believe in the person, they don't believe, here's a court case that 100% proves that you are not your status. You are not the person. You are not this entity that's created at your birth. It's property of government. You have no say over it whatsoever. You are administered by the administrative system that's set up for it. You're not in the common law. You're not protected by the Constitution. You have no natural rights. The Constitution is strictly for private people who reserve all their rights. That's why it's called a negative document. You're in the positive law, not the negative law. Negative law is the law of nature, law of God. Positive law is the law of the state, the legal system, the law of nations. It's that simple.
Now, you've brought the Bible into this a few times. Are you a religious person?
No, I'm strictly 100% against religion. What I found, though, is that as I was studying the legal system, everything kept coming back to the Bible. I'm like, why are they having you swear? Why are they having you swear on the Bible? Right. If I go to court into a legal system, which has nothing to do with this is purely commercial law, which is against the Bible. Right? Usury against the Bible, money against the Bible. Why am I putting my hand on a Bible? Well, it turns out by putting your hand on a Bible, swearing an oath to the state in God's name, you're actually blaspheming the Bible. You're saying, I don't follow this law that I have in my hand. right? I'm actually saying I'm following another doctrine. Doctrine means law, right? Remember, the Bible is law. It's not religion.
Yeah, the
Religion
Torah, the
and
law.
religion and the Bible have nothing to do with each other. You follow the law religiously, just like you might drink coffee religiously or smoke cigarettes religiously, right? But religion is a dead. It's like having a straw man. You call yourself a Christian, but you're not doing anything to follow the law. You call yourself whatever. You're not doing anything to actually. You're not a verb. You're a noun. You're a name, a person, place, or thing. You're not anything with substance. You're not doing anything substantial. So you're putting your hand on the Bible. You're basically blaspheming the entirety of the Bible, the law, and God, and saying, I follow the legal state. And see, what I found is that we're stuck on this word God. God. You hear the word God, and you instantly turn off. We've been conditioned. Probably the best brainwashing trick that's ever happened to us is to not invest any time in reading the Bible. You go back to all the scholars. Horace Greeley said a Bible reading people cannot be enslaved. The slaves that took the Bible and used it, they were released from slavery because they understood that they were going under a different law. So the problem that we have is that everything's voluntary. We voluntarily put our hand on the Bible and blaspheme it and enter into the legal system. Then we're trapped. We've given up all natural rights, which are called God-given or unalienable rights, right? Then here's what's so interesting and why I'm so passionate about telling people about this. I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form. I don't want you to think that at all. What has happened is that the church, the organized religion, organized church, is the number one thing that keeps people away from the Bible. So you have two options. You either hate religion with a passion. You think it's stupid. You think it's ridiculous. And therefore, you don't even give the Bible a chance. Not that the religion has anything to do with the Bible. In fact, they literally preach their own doctrines, right? Which means law. The church will tell you to follow the law of the land instead of the Bible law, right? So obviously there's something wrong here. There's something opposite going on. So then you have the people who are churchgoers, who are members of the church, right? Bible says, be a member of nothing, call yourself nothing, take no flattering titles, including Christian. There's nowhere in the Bible it says be a Christian. Christian is actually a bad word in the Bible because it's a title. It means nothing. It's empty. Right? So now you have this group that goes to church and they pretend to worship. They sit there, they chant in public. You go and you read the Bible. It says, go in a closet and pray privately. This is right before the Lord's Prayer. Everybody chants the Lord's Prayer. It means nothing. You're in public prayer. Bible says don't pray in public. It means nothing. The most criminal element of our society, the most immoral people will always be the loudest to pray the Lord's Prayer in church because they're doing it for show, right? So the people that go to church are even worse because they don't read the Bible. They listen to a false preacher who's preaching the doctrine of the church. So they too are kept away from the Bible. So you have two systems in place that are almost infallible because either way, you're not reading the Bible.
Right.
Now, why is that important? Is it because I want you to be religious? No, absolutely not. Because the courts say that the Bible is the foundation of our law. This is why you find it all over the place. You find it everywhere. Any researcher worth his salt is going to eventually come up against this Bible and say, why the heck does everything seem opposed to the Bible, right? Why does the legal system seem opposed to the Bible? Here is what will explain it to you, and you will have no doubt. Because what I need you to understand, Freeman, is that it's not your opinion, my opinion means shit. It means absolutely nothing, okay? Because if you're acting in the property of another, then you don't get an opinion. You don't make the law, you don't make the decisions. Likewise, when you're talking about the truth or the self-evident, self-existent truth of nature, your opinion doesn't stop a tree from existing, right? If you say, I'm a nihilist, I don't believe in anything real, that doesn't stop anything, right? Doesn't mean that something doesn't exist just because you say it doesn't exist. Therefore, technically, if God, quote unquote, exists, your opinion of it doesn't mean that it exists or doesn't exist. That's just logical, reasonable thinking. So you go and what I need people to understand above all else, if you get nothing else from this talk that we're having right now, you need to know that you are firstly and foremost a citizen, a subject of government. That means that you are completely bound by whatever law government makes and whatever beliefs, quote unquote, government has. Now, I know government's a fiction. I get it. It's not the point. You're dealing in fiction, and therefore you have to think fictionally. Okay? Otherwise, you'll end up in jail. Because remember, you're surety. By being in bond and surety, the definition of Strawman is homo, that means that you are responsible in a performance debt, a contract of citizenship, to ensure that the person you're acting in, the straw man, follows the law. That's the law of persons. That's the legal U.S. code, the law. All those rules that nobody has any idea what they say, you're agreeing to that by acting in the person, the property of another. Okay? So now we have to say, well, what does government believe? If government says that the Bible, because the common law of England passed on to the common law of America, and it used to be illegal to even speak badly about the Bible. You'd be thrown in jail because it was considered blasphemy towards the law, not to the Bible, not to religion, but to the actual law, right? The moral law, the spiritual law, the unwritten law, as opposed to the written legal law. Here is what government believes. And because government believes it, you, by default, as its property, believe it too. I want you to think about insurance. Okay, let's say you live in a high flood zone or a high fire zone, for God's sake. Act of God, when we go and we look at Black's First or any legal dictionary, you're going to find the word or the term act of God. Where else do you find act of God? You find act of God in insurance policies. You find act of God in anything that deals with something that's not man-made. So now we know that government obviously acknowledges a higher power. Why do I say that? Because an act of God is defined as an inevitable accident. Any misadventure or casualty is said to be caused by the act of God, when it happens by the direct, immediate, and exclusive operation of the forces of nature, uncontrolled or uninfluenced by the power of man and without human intervention. Now, when we say the word human as compared to man, it's very important to understand human is what belongs to man. Human is never man. They call us humans, like human anatomy, human emotions, human this, because that's what belongs to man. It is not the full substance of man. So human intervention that comes from man. Okay, so uninfluenced by the power of man and without human intervention. Okay, so that's anything that happens in nature. Did you hear that? An exclusive operation of the forces of nature. How is government defining God as nature? How does the Bible define God? Same thing. See, no one has ever come up to you, and most people will come up to you and say, "Do you believe in God? Do you believe in this? What religion are you?" It turns out God. Hey, God is a very generic term. It means nothing. It means magistrate. Who's a magistrate? President, king, pope. Anybody can be a magistrate as long as you have a little power. The mayor is a magistrate. The judge in a court, you used to pray to the judge, right? Pray became plead. You used to pray to God. God meant magistrate, meant judge. That's in the old writings of the courts, okay? So the judge is your God. You're asking him for judgment. Okay, you're again blaspheming the God of nature, taking a false God. This is. I want you to again. This is not religion. This is the two systems of law that you choose. By choosing your law, you are choosing your God. Either your God is the God of nature or the God of the state. You follow the natural law, you're God of nature. If not, then if you enter into mammon, the money system, valuation, well then you're in the legal system, and your God is man, or the titles that man puts upon himself. Again, not religion, just law, right? And this is, if you can actually look at the Bible in a neutral capacity, forget everything you've heard about it, all of a sudden, all this craziness of the legal system makes 100% sense, and that's what I wrote the book about. So again, exclusively by violence of nature, without human agency, any act or event happening, a disaster, all these fire, it's so important to understand this because one, that means government believes in God, therefore you do if you're its citizen. Two, that means the Bible is the foundation of its law because it's acknowledging God and it's defining God as the Bible does, as nature. So when you look at the word God in the Bible, you find that the word God was used by the king to replace all kinds of different words. Anything from king to magistrate to archon to Elohim to God, being God-like, the landlords, the Lord gods. The word God is a generic term that just simply means magistrate or something that has power over you, sovereign, right? That's all it means. So it's a term that we shouldn't even be using. In the original text, well, I shouldn't say original text, but in the older text, because there really is no original Bible. I mean, I can't point to you and say that's an original. So in that way, the Bible is a simulacrum, which is a copy without an original. So I can point to you and I can say it's just ancient knowledge. In other words, I can say, look, here the word God, like in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, but that's not talking about the God of nature. That's talking about the Elohim, which is the gods, plural. And hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden, the God of nature appears as Jehovah, right? And so all of a sudden you look and you say, well, what do these words mean? I know what God means, or I thought I did, but it turns out that God can mean any of 30 different words that the king used to God to replace. So I look up these words, right? Theos means God-like. Elohim is the gods, plural. There's so many different words. Archons, we know what archons are. Kings, magistrate, judges, they're all God. And so you have people that don't want to read the Bible because God's such a bastard. God's a real asshole in the Bible, pardon my French. But it turns out that's always men acting in the stead of God. We call the Pope the vicar of Christ, the vicar of God. Means anti-God or replacement of God. We call the Queen the vicar of Christ, vicar of God. Replacement of God. That is the title that is assigned to them. So what we have is now a definition. When we're talking about the supreme being, Jehovah, it turns out this word is a verb. So the what we call the true God or the God of nature, or the God that is nature, right? Because how is the government defining God? An act of God is an act of nature. Therefore, nature is God. So you have this new definition now. No one's ever come up to you and said, hey, here's the definition of God. This will change forever the way you read the Bible. Okay?
Right.
It means self-evident truth, self-existence, all that is in nature, the universe and the supreme being. It's a verb. Being is a verb. It's not a being. It's not something you point at an idol and say that is God. It is all that is in being. It is a verb. It's an action. It's what's happening now. It is what was, what is, and what shall be in the moment, right? So it's timelessness. It's this beautiful, beautiful concept that came way before the Bible was ever a thought, right? And it came through the Jews, and it came through all these different religions, different peoples, as basically all of existence, which we would call self-evident truth. Again, take away all your opinions and everything man-made. What is left is self-existence. The trees, the grass, the water, the air, right? That is all, and man himself considered part of nature. What is man-made is then opposed to nature, God. And you don't have to go any farther than that. That is the whole purpose of establishing the notion of God, or I should say the word Jehovah. And once you understand that, then you understand what an act of God is. What act of God is act of nature, obviously. insurance cannot cover an act of nature unless you specifically pay money for it, because it recognizes that it's not, it can only cover legal things. Legal things are man-made or things caused by man. So this, Freeman, this is how the entire system is set up. Not religion, but the law, the two opposing laws, the law of nature, the law of spiritual, moral, unwritten law versus the legal, opposing force of that, the universe and the adverse. What is Satan defined as? But as something that is adversarial to nature, to reality. That is you go to the Bible, you start reading it with that information, you start looking up every single word, you realize that not only have we been tricked and deceived into not understanding the law that would set us free, that which a lot of the maxims of law, the principles of law in legalism are taken, the ones that protect the private people who know this, right? You've got now the actual meaning of the word that actually is self-evident. I mean, it's this
right.
beautiful thing, and if you understand that, then you can understand what my book is about. Are these two paths? The path of Christ being a metaphor for the law of God, right? Follow Christ means follow the law. The return of Christ means that the law will return to men who will be Christ-like, right? Follow the example, the allegory. And then you have the legal person, the straw man. So you can only tell the story of the straw man or of Christ by comparing it to the opposite, which is the straw man, right?
Right.
So for Jesus, for the story of Christ, we have the Bible, but we don't really have a dictionary of terms. So we read the Bible, we're taking it literally when we should be taking it completely metaphorically. Then we have the legal system, legal man. All we have is a dictionary, but we have no story. No one's ever told the story of the straw man, how he comes to be, which is by hiding the Bible, the natural law, away from men, convincing them to go on that what you call the left hand side of God, not the right hand, or left hand path, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this. Once you understand this and you put away religion and the religious notion, everything about this whole system, including what's happening to you, makes 100% sense.
Wow. I mean, I always wondered how an atheist would walk into a courtroom and swear on the Bible and not care, who cares? It's the Bible. It's nothing to me, right? But now I understand swearing on the Bible, the blasphemy, the correlation between your now declaring this oath on the Bible to swear against this other God. Jehovah said, "Call me jealous," and one thing that comes to mind right away, and we're wrapping up this first hour very quickly, Clint. The first thing that popped into my head as we were discussing this was when Obama was sworn in and said, "Well, I forgot my Bible, but it counts anyway."
They want to use Washington's Bible, which of course Washington is revered as the number one. He should have been king, but he's the number one Mason, Freemason in America. So yeah. I mean, so yeah, it's so fascinating, and I gotta tell you, this is everything. It is the whole key to unlocking what you would call the mystery. Of course, there are no mysteries. There's only truth and untruth. But if you can hide the truth, then you've created something under the rose or a mystery. If you don't mind, I want to read one more thing. I know we're running out of time, but I want to read one more thing that really brings this back into the realm of those who originally sort of made this into a more secretive type of knowledge. This is
lay it out for us.
The Lost Light, an interpretation of ancient scriptures by Alvin Kuhn, and obviously coming from a Masonic, source. But you got to take these things, and again, you got to forget everything you think you know about these people, these elites, these controllers, and just listen to the damn message, right? Because here he is admitting what they did. They turned the truth into allegorical tales, and the reason that you tell ridiculous tales like Jonah and the whale, which when you translate whale, it's sea monster. You know, they used to put sea monsters on maps to scare people from not going in the. You take that literally, that Jonah was swallowed by a whale because they translated it into the dumbed down English as whale, but it's actually a fable. It's a sea monster. So you're supposed to take that and remember the story because it's ridiculous. You actually remember things because of their ridiculousness, and that's why the Bible has so many ridiculous stories that the church says are true, and you're to believe that they're literal instead of metaphoric. But almost everything in the Bible is metaphoric, and Christ even chastises his followers for not getting the metaphor. You know, for look, I'm talking in metaphor. If you know, don't be an idiot. Here's what he says. He says, little could the ancient mythologists and sages have foreseen that the fabulous narrations which their genius devised to cloak high truth would end by plaguing the mind of the Western world with 16 centuries of unconscionable stultification. We're talking about the Bible. They could not possibly imagine that their allegorical constructions to dramatize spiritual truth would so miscarry from their hidden intent as to cast the mental life of half the world for ages under the cloud of the most grotesque superstition known to history. This is talking about religion, not the Bible itself, but religion. Nor could they have dreamed that the gross blindness and obtuseness of later epochs would cite these same marvelously ingenious portrayals as the evidence of childish crudity on the part of their formulators. That's referring to the atheists. That's referring to these people out there who are just saying, I don't believe in God. It's a ridiculous story, calling it childlike, right? These are brilliant allegories and stories of moral teaching that you're relegating to fucking cavemen or something, right? Nor could they have dreamed who could have suspected that a body of the most signal instrumentalities for conveying and preserving deep knowledge, which is the allegory, the metaphor, the parable, ever devised by man, would become the means of centuries of mental enslavement? Nothing more clearly evidences the present age's loss of fixed moorings and philosophical truth than the inconsistency of its attitudes towards the sacred scriptures of antiquity. The general mind, indoctrinated by priestcraft, regards them as infallible revelations and holds them as fetishes, which it were a sacrilege to challenge, while theological scholarship hedges from pious veneration of them over outright skepticism of their divine origin. When we say divine, it just means learned men. Swinging more recently to a view which takes them to the simple conceptions of men just emerging from cave and forest barbarism, right? Now let me skip to the end where he wraps this up. He says, for 16 centuries, the best intelligence of the West took the ancient sages' books of wisdom, which were in all cases the spiritual dramatizations of the experience of the human soul on earth, allegory, metaphor, storytelling, which all, take the Native American Indians telling the story of the great wolf and the moon who swallowed the moon, right? You're not supposed to think of that literally. So the spiritual dramatizations of the experience of the human soul on earth for objective historical narratives. You're taking the Bible as history when it's a timeless document. It applies to all times in all places. It's you that either follow the law or you fall into the legal trap. And that's going to be timeless. That's never going to have a history. It's going to be at all times. The spectacle that will soon throw the world first into wonder, confusion, and dismay, and then into clownish laughter, is that of a civilization covering 1/3 of the globe and boasting itself as the highest in culture and in the historical period, all the while taking its moral and spiritual guidance for an eon from a book or books of the true content and meaning of which it never for 1 moment has had the slightest inkling.
Wow.
Right? So you got this book of law that you've never actually sat down and said, I'm going to read this in neutrality without anybody else's opinion, without my opinions. I'm going to look at it for what it is. I'm going to look at the words, look at the concordances, look at the Greek, look at the Chaldean, look at the Hebrew, look at this. I'm going to read it for what it is. That's what he's saying. You've never read it. You criticize it, you hate it, all these emotions, but you've never read it. Even people who've read it 10 times, they're reading it in English. You can't read the Bible in English. Anyone who's, for instance, who knows Greek or is from Greece says you cannot translate Greek into English. English is a dumb down language. They call it dog Latin, which means, dog is a 4-footed beast. That's what they call us. Dog Latin is the English or the Latin grammatical set to English. And so, all these languages were poetic and they had beautiful meaning. They had beauty to them. They were meant to enlighten and to make you feel good. English is a literal language. So you got a bunch of people who are completely taking this literally, as it says, instead of spiritually or metaphorically or allegorically. And that's the whole problem. So that's what religion is the literalist interpretation of the Bible used. The best example I can give you, Freeman, did you ever see the movie, the Book of Eli?
I did once.
So you got basically the good guy who's trying to get the Bible to a library so that everybody can benefit from its knowledge and its ancient wisdom. Then you have the bad guy who has a bunch of illiterates around him searching for a book they don't even know what they're looking for because they can't read. And he's having to look for the Bible because he wants to use the Bible as a control tool to rule the world, because if only he knows what's in the Bible, then he can control everybody through their ignorance of what is the natural law, right? So on the good side, the path of Christ, you're trying to share the knowledge, the law, and on the evil side, which is what we have in the church and the government, the church and the state, which support each other. They can't exist without each other. You have those who are hiding the knowledge of the law from us so that they can control us. Because, again, a Bible-reading people cannot be enslaved.
Amazing, Clint. Wow. I mean, I could sit here and go on and on with this because this is fascinating. I've never thought to look at the Bible in this way. And I'm going to open it up and dig in again and see it in another way and try to understand this. Of course, legalese seems to be well over my head. Every document, I don't know what's going on your end there, but
this is why I wrote the book, man. It's got over 2,000 legal terms defined in the book, straight from the dictionaries.
Tell everybody how to get your book and what's going on.
Strawmanstory.info is the website. You can download it for free there. I also printed copies because a lot of people don't like the digital thing. It hurts their eyes. Which I give it away free and just ask for donations. Because it does me no good to have this knowledge without others out there. I can't do anything. I can't free myself without others to depend on. As you figured out, your journeys. Right, you took a big leap of faith and you said, I'm gonna go out in nature. What you're really saying is, I'm gonna depend on God. Well, guess what? If man is part of God, then depending on man for your well-being is part of it. And you have to find like-minded people who are willing to follow the law, which is the highest law is love and charity. Basically, charity does involve money, right? Taking care of each other. That's what you did. A lot of people can't do what you did, which is to step out and embrace that wondrous unknown of having no security, no insurances. You did what most people want to do but can't because they're stuck in the legal system.
And I found that it worked. I found that I was in God's hands. And I have told this to many a Christian, just, talk to me after you've actually put your life in God's hands and now see how it is, because it worked. It led me, it guided me. Every step led to the next step. I was on my natural path, and it led me right here to where now I'm an unofficial businessman, unknowing that I was actually working into a business from this freeman situation. And just to clarify for the listening audience, the free man on the land came long after Freeman, long after me, all right? Free men on the land, I don't agree with those things. I think it's a foolish battle. So I hated that because I was free man long before the free man on the land, that everybody equated me into that storyline, which I really disagree with. But Clint Richardson has brought us this concept now where we can understand the law, the natural law, and the law that is described within the Torah or the Bible, if you can move away from the dumbed downness of English and realize that the Church of England does own the copyrights to the King James Version.
Well,
you know?
Yes, exactly. That tells you a lot right there, because all law is copyrighted, right? So, yeah, I tell you this: you're going to get a lot of comments coming because of what we've talked about today, because people are so brainwashed, so conditioned to not accept anything when the second you mention the word Jesus Christ or the Bible or God, they turn off, and they don't even realize how conditioned. I didn't realize how conditioned I was. I didn't realize that every time the Bible said, the wise man will follow this path and the fool will do this, I didn't realize almost every time I was the fool in the Bible. I was the one the Bible was calling such a fool for believing that I had some godlike knowledge that God didn't exist or whatever, And until I actually read the thing and understood it in its proper context, like I said, just having the definition of God is huge as it's used, right? As it's intended, not as the church says it is, not as some idol or something. It's so brilliant. It's such a brilliant book of ancient knowledge. And that's all I'm passing on. None of this is my opinion. None of this is my own definitions of words. My book is strictly taking all the years of looking at the concordances and all the different words and languages and putting them down so that people can understand. And that is why I wrote the book. I mean, I don't want to say that my book is a replacement for the Bible in any way, shape, or form, but to get you in the mood, to tickle your fancy about what the Bible is and how it applies to law, and seeing that the court defines it that way as the common law, the foundation of law, that if you don't obey it, then you're going to be put into a system of control because you're not able to self-govern yourself, right? I mean, that's why I wrote the book. And like I said, it's not going to do me any good to have this knowledge unless others possess it, and we can come together eventually. And instead of traveling like you were, actually start our own sort of, society, if you will, which gets into dangerous territory, obviously, because people think cult or, communitarianism or all that crap. But, you got to it says leave her. It says leave the cities, leave the nations, leave the legal system. And that's what we're going to have to do. Otherwise, we're going to have to take the mark that we talked about earlier. We're going to have to become biometrical slaves. And we're going to have to take our sustenance from government only through that mark. And that's that is straight from the allegory, straight from the parabolic storytelling of the Bible. It's happening in the next, 2017? We've got 13 years before they plan on registering every man, giving him a digital identity.
Without a doubt, folks, it is time to turn the tide. If you are to just follow along with the story and just keep going, then we can clearly see what is to come from our situation here on planet Earth, with AI moving into very, very intelligent zones. There is now AI that AlphaGo Zero, which is superior to all the other AIs, beating it at the game of Go 100-0. And then we have the full-on facial recognition databases that China is putting into play. We know that's all coming. So we have to make that transition. Us, in this friendship agenda, as we have started to call our cult, if you will, our collective is the friendship agenda. And we know that friendship is the currency and that kindness is the rule. And we know that it works. and we have to convince others of this as well. And a great way to open this door for people so that they can see through the biblical to the legalese is to get over to strawmanstory.info and get your free copy of Clint Richardson's book. Check out his videos, check out all his shows and works, and let's get this puzzle sorted out, because together we need to walk away. You see, we can't combat this system with the system. It's never going to work, because you're going to have to walk in there and blaspheme yourself by taking your oath on the Bible. I have certainly learned a lot in this show. I hope you all have as well. This has been amazing, and it's not done yet. And folks, we're going to get even stranger, because when we're talking about the powers that be, the elite, I mean, I think it's a disrespect to Satanists to call them Satanist. I call them baby eaters. That is my term of endearment for the elite, the baby eaters. And I think that we're getting closer and closer to actually finding that's the truth. So when we're taking on these baby eaters in their legal and lawful systems, we are a fiction, as Clint has pointed out. And as a fiction, you've got zero power. You're a straw man to be burnt as the sacrifice on the altar. And we're going to get deeper into this in the second hour with the blood sacrifices that come along with this religious following of the legal system. So I hope you all will stay tuned or become members over at FreemanTV.com. It seems I need your support more than ever. Make me strong, and I will make you stronger. Those 10,000 people on YouTube, come on over to FreemanTV.com and check it out. See all that you're missing by only watching on YouTube, because there's so much more on FreemanTV.com than there is on YouTube. I guarantee you that. Articles, information, past shows that I have done with other people, my knowledge, everybody else's knowledge that I can get on here. So come on over and show your support. Sign up, jump in, and come join us in the members section for this second amazing hour with Clint Richardson. So I hope you all will go over to strawmanstory.info and get your copy of his book today. We will see you all next week with another amazing show. Clint, this was an amazing follow-up to There Is No Apple in the Story of Adam and Eve, last week's show. So thank you so much for this great information, and I hope that you won't be standing alone with it.
Thanks so much, man. Good to be here.
Yeah. So, folks, we're going to move on over into the members section, and it's always a good time in there because it's just us and you, the Friendship Agenda. So if you don't know, friendshipagenda.com is our social network here for the show. Come and join all the other friends and all the other people, and we will find this path out of this madness. We'll see you all next week.